We live in a world that talks about happiness all the time. It's in ads, self help books, podcasts, captions under vacation photos. It's in videos that tell you to wake up at 5 a.m., fix your body, get rich, buy better clothes, and build a better life, and become the type of person other people wish they were. Everywhere you look, someone is selling you a version of happiness. They suggest that happiness is waiting inside a better body, phone, car, or routine. And the strange part is that a lot of it works, at least for a second. A new purchase, a good post, a compliment, or a big achievement can all feel good, but the feeling rarely lasts as long as people expect, and you are left asking the same question time and time again. Why does this new feeling not feel like enough? The United States was built around a famous promise: the pursuit of happiness. That phrase sounds simple, it sounds almost sacred, but somewhere along the way, the pursuit of happiness became something else. It became a chase. Today, what we call happiness often looks less like a real state of being and more like a product display. A dinner, a vacation, or even a workout can become content. A purchase or an achievement becomes a status symbol. A person's life becomes more than something lived. It becomes shown off. And once life becomes something to show, happiness becomes something to perform. That is the problem. Not that people want to be happy. Of course, people want to be happy. The problem is that modern culture often teaches people to search for happiness through consumption, status, attention, and comparison. These indulgences create fleeting moments of happiness, but they cannot create a stable life. They cannot give a person a reason to keep going when things fall apart. So this video is about a simple question. What if happiness was never supposed to be the goal? What if the more we chase it, the more it escapes us? And what if a good life is not built by trying to feel happy all the time, but by building something worth living for? Comparison is an innately human trait. We evaluate our own abilities, choices, and social standing by referencing those around us. For most of human history, people compared themselves to the people around them, whether it's their family, friends, neighbors, classmates, or coworkers. That kind of comparison could still hurt, but it had limits. You knew the people around you. You saw their ups and downs. Importantly, you saw the full person, not just the highlight. Now the comparison never ends. You can wake up, open your phone, and see hundreds of people who seem richer, happier, fitter, smarter, more loved, more successful, and more alive than you. And most of them are not even people you know. They are strangers. People whose lives enter your mind for 10 seconds at a time, just long enough to make your own life feel smaller. The phone does not show you other people. It shows you edited versions of other people. It shows you the best part of their best day. And then it asks you to compare that to your own normal life. That comparison is not fair, but it feels real. Social media can turn happiness into something you're supposed to recognize from the outside. A happy person, at least online, often seems to have a certain kind of life. Their room is clean, their clothes fit well, their skin looks clear, their friends seem close, and their vacations look effortless. Even their ordinary routines feel more organized than yours. After seeing this kind of content every day, it becomes easy to forget that you are not looking at someone's whole life. You are looking at a version of it that was chosen, edited, and posted. That distinction matters. A post does not have to be fake to be misleading, but each one still leaves out most of the story. It leaves out the boredom, stress, doubt, conflict, and normal repetition that make up most of life. The problem is not that people post good moments. The problem is that the feed collects everyone's best moments and presents them as if they are a normal standard. Over time, that can change what a normal life feels like. A quiet weekend may start to feel lonely because someone else is at a party. A normal bedroom may start to feel embarrassing because someone else has an apartment that looks designed. A healthy body may start to feel unfinished because someone else looks better under perfect lighting. The viewer may know on some level that the comparison is unfair, but the feeling still lands. This is one reason social media comparison can be so powerful. It does not always convince people through direct argument. It works through repetition. The same images appear again and again until they start to shape a person's sense of what life should look like. Not through one post, but through hundreds. Not through one influencer, but through a whole environment of people appearing happier, richer, more attractive, and more successful than they may actually feel. The result is more than envy. It's a quiet shift in expectations. A person may begin to judge their life less by what it feels like to live and more by how it would appear to someone else. They may choose a restaurant because it photographs well, buy clothes because they imagine how they will look online, or feel pressure to document an experience before they have even processed it. The moment itself becomes less important than the proof of the moment. That is where performance enters. Happiness becomes something that needs an audience. A good day feels better when it can be shown. An achievement feels larger when other people react to it. A purchase feels more meaningful when it signals taste, money, or status. None of this means people are shallow. It means the platforms are built in a way that makes public approval feel like part of the experience. And the numbers only make this worse. Likes, views, comments, followers, and shares turn attention into something measurable. They give people fast feedback on how much reaction their life produced. In real life, self-worth is complicated. It comes from relationships, values, effort, character, and time. Online, it can start to feel much simpler. You post something, and the platform gives you a score. That score may not mean what it seems to mean, but it still affects people. A post that does well can make someone feel seen. A post that does badly can make the same person wonder what went wrong. This creates a strange habit of mind. That shift is subtle, but it matters. When people begin to watch themselves from the outside, they can lose contact with what they actually want. Over time, the performed self can become easier to understand than the real one because it has a clear image, story, and style. Real life is harder to package. Now, this does not mean social media is evil. It can help people learn, create, organize, laugh, and stay connected. The problem is the culture that forms around it. When visibility becomes a measure of value, people may start to treat their lives as something that needs to be proven. Happiness becomes less about how life is experienced and more about how life is displayed. And that is a fragile way to build oneself. Because attention can feel like connection, but it's not the same thing. Being watched is not the same as being known. A person can be visible to hundreds of people and still feel alone. They can receive approval without feeling understood. And they can have an audience without having a place where they are allowed to be ordinary. That difference matters because people do not only need attention, they need relationships where they don't need to perform. And when those relationships are missing, consumer culture is ready to step in with an answer. It suggests that the gap between who you are and who you want to be can be solved by buying, upgrading, improving, and becoming more impressive. That is where validation and consumerism begin to overlap. Social media creates the feeling that life should look a certain way. Consumer culture then offers a way to get closer to that image. It suggests that the gap between your real life and your ideal life can be narrowed through what you buy, what you wear, where you go, and how you present yourself. This is not new. People have used objects to communicate identity for a long time. Clothes, homes, cars, watches, phones, and brands can all send signals about taste, class, status, personality, and belonging. A person's purchases can say something about who they are, or at least who they want to be seen as. But social media makes this signal much stronger because every purchase can become public. Anything you purchase or do can become a post intended as evidence of a certain lifestyle. Those things can become part of a larger image of who you are. In that environment, people may not only buy things because they need them, they may buy things because those things seem to promise a version of the self. This is why consumerism can feel personal. A product rarely feels like just a product. It often carries a small story with it. A new outfit or skincare routine suggests confidence. A new car or expensive vacation suggests success. That object becomes attached to a feeling. This is why consumerism can be hard to criticize. It often does create a real feeling of confidence, control, or change. The problem is that the feeling is usually temporary, while the desire for another version of the self remains. This is where advertising becomes powerful. The market does not need people to feel completely miserable. It only needs them to feel slightly unfinished, slightly behind, slightly less attractive, successful, interesting, or complete than they could be. That small feeling of lack is enough. No matter what a person feels, the market can offer them a solution. This is not always obvious because the language of consumer culture often sounds positive. It talks about self care, confidence, empowerment, improvement, and becoming your best self. Some of that can be real. People should take care of themselves. People should want better lives. There is nothing wrong with comfort, beauty, or ambition, but there is a difference between using things to support a life and using things to create a self. That difference matters. If an object supports life, it serves a purpose. But if the object creates the self, it carries more weight than it can handle. It becomes proof that you are successful, attractive, interesting, disciplined, or worth noticing. At that point, buying becomes a form of self construction. This is what researchers mean when they talk about conspicuous consumption. It's consumption meant to be seen. People do not only buy the thing, they buy the signal attached to the thing. In the context of social media, that signal becomes easier to display and easier to compare. A person can see what others have, feel what they lack, buy something to reduce that feeling, then post the results for validation. The cycle becomes simple: compare, desire, buy, display, receive feedback, and repeat. Over time, that can make the self feel like a project that is never finished. This is part of what makes modern happiness feel exhausting. It becomes about managing the appearance of a life that seems worth enjoying. That pressure can be hard to notice because it blends into normal behavior. People do not wake up and say, "Today I will perform my identity through consumption." They just scroll, compare, want, buy, post, and check for reaction. The process feels natural because the culture around them makes it natural. Much of the process is subconscious, but the result can still be damaging. If people learn to build identity through what they consume, they may become more dependent on the market for self-worth. If they learn to measure happiness through public signs of success, they may become more dependent on attention. If they learn to treat life as something that must be upgraded, they may lose the ability to feel satisfied with what is already real. This does not mean people should stop buying things or enjoying beauty. That would be too simple. The issue is not consumption itself. The issue is what happens when consumption becomes the main way people find meaning in their lives. Consumer culture can imitate meaning very well, but imitation is not the same as foundation. A foundation has to hold when the novelty fades. It has to remain when the purchase becomes normal, when attention moves on, and when life becomes difficult again. Consumerism struggles there because it's built around the next desire. It keeps people looking ahead to what they do not have yet. It teaches them to treat satisfaction as something, one purchase, one upgrade, or one achievement away. That is why the promise is so seductive and so fragile. It says, "You are almost there," but it rarely lets you arrive. This version of happiness fails because it asks temporary things to solve permanent questions. A person can enjoy temporary pleasures. These moments can matter. They can bring pleasure, pride, relief, and excitement. The problem comes when they are expected to answer deeper questions about identity, purpose, and worth. That is the gap. Modern culture often treats happiness like a feeling that needs to be increased. If you feel bad, find something that makes you feel better. If life feels boring, add excitement. If you feel insecure, improve yourself. If you feel behind, work harder. The culture often suggests that instead of sitting with a problem, people should buy a solution. Some of this advice can help in small ways, but it can also create a shallow view of human life. People do not only need better moods, they need a sense that their life has shape and direction. Without that, happiness becomes dependent on conditions that keep changing. This is why pleasure alone cannot carry a life. Pleasure is real, but it's not stable. It rises and falls. Every good or new experience ends eventually. Even major achievements can fade faster than people expect. This is not a personal failure, it's part of how people adapt. When something good enters your life, it may feel exciting at first. Then, over time, your mind adjusts. The new thing will become normal because the level of happiness it created starts to drop. So you begin looking for another change that might bring the feeling back. That pattern is sometimes called the hedonic treadmill. The image is useful because it explains why people can keep moving without feeling like they have arrived. They reach one goal, adapt to it, and then need another one. The treadmill keeps running, but the sense of arrival never lasts. This happens with money, status, appearance, achievement, and attention. A student may think they will feel secure once they get a certain grade, award, or college acceptance. Then they get it, and the pressure moves to the next goal. A creator may think they will feel satisfied once they reach a certain number of followers. Then the number grows, and the new fear becomes losing relevance. A person may think they will feel confident after changing their body, style, or lifestyle. Then they change it, and a new insecurity takes the place of the old one. The mind can always find another gap. This is why a life built around external validation becomes so unstable. It depends on things that are outside of the person's control. Other people have to notice. The achievement has to be respected. The product has to signal the right thing. When those things happen, the person may feel good. When they do not, the person may feel exposed, embarrassed, or worthless. That creates a fragile kind of self-worth. It's fragile because it must be confirmed again and again. It's not enough to be successful once. You have to keep proving it over and over. The performance has no natural ending. This is one reason people can feel tired, even when life looks good from the outside. They may have achievements, comfort, friends, followers, or nice things, but still feel like they are one step away from being found out. The image may be strong, but the person underneath may not feel secure. That matters because life will eventually test every image. People fail, people lose jobs, people get rejected, people get sick, families change, bodies change, plans collapse. Life can become painful in ways that no amount of status can prevent. In those moments, the performance does not help much. A person cannot shop their way out of grief. The tools that work for image management often fail when life becomes serious. That is when the difference between happiness and meaning becomes clear. Happiness as a feeling depends on circumstances. Meaning can survive through circumstances. This does not mean meaning makes pain disappear. In many cases, meaning comes with pain. Loving people means you can lose them. Committing to something means you can fail at it. Serving others means you may have to sacrifice comfort. Building a life with purpose often requires effort that does not feel happy in the moment, but meaning gives pain a place inside a larger story. This kind of life may not always feel pleasant, but it can feel grounded. That is what consumer happiness often lacks. It offers moments, not roots. It gives people something to want, but not always something to live for. The problem is not that people enjoy comfort. The problem is that comfort has limits. A comfortable life can still feel empty if it lacks connection, purpose, and responsibility. An impressive life can still feel unstable if it depends on constant approval. A busy life can still feel directionless if the person has never asked what all the movement is for. This is why the question, "What makes me happy?" may not be enough. A better question might be, "What makes my life worth living, even when I'm not happy?" That question changes the conversation. That is the kind of question modern culture often avoids because it cannot be answered through consumption. It cannot be solved by an app, a purchase, a brand, or a status symbol. It requires reflection. It requires relationships. It requires a person to think about what they owe, what they value, and what kind of life they are actually trying to build. Without those questions, happiness can become a chase with no destination. With them, happiness can become something different. Not the goal of life, but a result of living for something real. That question changes the conversation. That is the kind of question modern culture often avoids because it cannot be answered through consumption. It cannot be solved by an app, a purchase, a brand, or a status symbol. It requires reflection, it requires relationships, it requires a person to think about what they owe, what they value, and what kind of life they are actually trying to build. Without those questions, happiness can become a chase with no destination. With them, happiness can become something different, not the goal of life, but a result of living for something real. So, if this version of happiness fails, the next question is obvious. What should replace it? The answer cannot be just be happy in a different way. That would repeat the same problem. It would still make happiness the center of everything. A stronger answer begins with finding meaning in one's life. Meaning is harder to sell because it's slower. It does not always look exciting, enjoyable, and certainly not instant, but it can give life a structure that pleasure alone cannot. A meaningful life is not built only around how a person feels. It's built around what a person serves, who they love, what they build, and what they are willing to be responsible for. That may sound less attractive than happiness at first. Responsibility does not sound as fun as pleasure. Commitment does not sound as easy as freedom. Service does not sound as exciting as status, but over time, those things can create a deeper form of fulfillment because they connect a person to something beyond themselves. This is where relationships matter. Human beings need more than attention, they need connection. A person can be seen online by many people and still feel alone if no one actually knows them. They can receive praise and still feel empty if they do not have relationships where the performance can stop. Real connection is different because it's not based only on image. It requires time, trust, honesty, and patience. It allows a person to be more than their best moments. In a real relationship, you can be tired, confused, boring, hurt, or imperfect and still belong. And that kind of belonging is hard to replace. Attention asks for performance, but connection allows simple presence. When people have real relationships, they have a place to return to when the public image fails. They have people who know more than the highlight reel. They have a form of value that does not depend on being impressive every second. This is one reason research on well being often points toward what some economists call relational goods. These are the parts of life that come from relationships, trust, community, and shared experience. They are not goods in the normal consumer sense. You cannot buy them off a shelf. They exist between people, a friendship, family dinner, trusted mentor, and a community that cares about you aren't products. And that is exactly why they matter. They cannot be consumed in the same way. They have to be built. They require effort, mutual care, and time. Meaning can also be found in contribution. A life centered only on the self can become narrow. At first, focusing on your own happiness may seem natural. Most people want to feel better, achieve more, and build a future that works for them. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But when every goal points inward, the self can become too small to carry the whole weight of life, and a person can become trapped in constant self measurement. Contribution breaks that loop because it turns attention outward. It asks a different question: what can I give? That does not have to mean changing the world in some huge public way. Most contributions are ordinary: helping a friend, teaching someone something, making useful work, being dependable, taking care of family, serving a community, creating something that helps people feel less alone. These acts may not always produce immediate happiness. Sometimes they are inconvenient, sometimes they require sacrifice, but they can create meaning because they show a person that their life matters beyond their own mood. This connects to the idea of generativity. Generativity means giving something to the future. It can mean raising children, but it can also mean mentoring, teaching, creating, building, protecting, or serving. It's the sense that your life produces value that does not end with you. This does not make life easy, but it makes it more grounded. That is also why the Japanese idea of ikigai is so strong. Ikigai is often translated as a reason for being. In popular culture, people often describe it as the overlap between what you love, what you are good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. The full idea is more complex than a simple diagram, but the basic insight is helpful. A meaningful life is not only about chasing what feels good, it's about finding where your abilities, loves, responsibilities, and the needs of the world meet. That frame is stronger than do what makes you happy. Sometimes what makes you happy in the moment can weaken you over time. Sometimes what gives your life meaning asks you to do something hard. A person may not feel happy while studying, practicing, apologizing, working, caring for someone, or telling the truth. But those acts can still build a better life. A meaningful life often asks more from people than happiness does. That may be why it's more stable. Happiness, as a feeling, comes and goes. Meaning can remain through changing feelings because it's tied to values and commitments. A person can feel tired and still know why they are working. They can feel sad and still know who they love and who loves them. They can feel uncertain and still know what they are responsible for. This is the kind of foundation modern culture often fails to provide. The culture is good at giving people goals, but not always good at helping them choose which goals are worth wanting. It gives direction, but lacks a deeper motive. This is why education matters. Young people often inherit a definition of success before they're old enough to question it. If schools only teach students how to compete, the culture will teach them what to want. A better education would help students ask what kind of life is worth building, not just what kind of life looks successful. They would learn to define a good life, not just consume one. This is not a rejection of ambition. People should still work hard and still build skills. They should still want stability, comfort, success, and joy. The point is not to stop caring about those things, but to put them in the right place. Money, status, and pleasure can make one's life better, but they cannot become the measure of someone's worth. Meaning gives those things a proper frame. It lets a person pursue success without letting success define their entire identity. That is the healthier version of happiness, not happiness as a chase or for public validation, but as a byproduct of living with purpose, connection, and depth. The point is not that people should stop wanting happiness. Wanting happiness is normal. Most people want peace, comfort, love, success, and joy. None of that is shallow. The problem is that modern culture often gives people a weak idea of where happiness comes from. It points them toward attention, status, consumption, and constant self-improvement, then treats those things like they can answer questions they were never built to answer. That is why the pursuit can become so tiring. A person may keep reaching for the next thing that is supposed to make life feel complete. A better image, a better routine, a better body, a better achievement, or a better version of themselves. But when happiness depends on becoming impressive, enough to feel secure, peace always stays just out of reach. The better question is not, how do I become happy? A better question is, what kind of life would make happiness possible? That question asks for more than a mood. It asks what kind of person you are becoming, who you are responsible to, and what you value when no one is watching. It forces you to look past the image of a good life and ask whether the life underneath is actually strong. Modern America has made happiness look like something to display. A good life often appears as something clean, successful, attractive, productive, and visible. But the image of a good life is not the same as the real thing. The real thing is harder to package. A real life includes boring days, private doubts, difficult choices, and work that no one applauds. It includes relationships that need care, responsibilities that interrupt comfort, and moments where happiness is not available on command. A culture built around performance struggles to value those parts because they do not always look impressive, but those are often the parts that make life strong. So maybe the pursuit of happiness needs to be understood differently, not as the pursuit of constant pleasure, public approval, or a more impressive version of yourself. Maybe the real pursuit's building a life with enough meaning that happiness has somewhere to grow. That kind of life may not always look perfect from the outside. It may not always be easy to explain, post, measure, or prove, but it has a better chance of feeling real from within. And maybe that is what people are actually looking for. Not a life that proves happiness, a life that can hold it.